Hey, welcome back to the Moo Shop. Christmas is just around the corner, and I'm thinking about making a couple of gifts for some friends and family. And one of them is this cutting board Lazy Susan centerpiece. It's really a cool project. It might look a little intimidating with all these angles, but it's really not. With a couple of tips and a couple of tricks I'll show you, it's actually fairly easy. So stick around. I'll show you how you do it. Come on. Alright, so we milled up all the wood that we need, and they're the same thickness and the same width. Then I got a larger board that's the same thickness but a wider width that we're going to make a hexagon out of. So that's the first thing we need to do is make this hexagon. And I'm going to go 3 1/4. So what we'll do is we'll take this board and we'll rip it at 3 1/4. And after we got that done, we're going to go over to the sled here and I'll show you how to set that up. An easy way to make a hexagon. Okay, so after I ripped it, I cut a piece of this off that's bigger than 3 1/4. And what we're going to do is we're going to set our fence. And if you're using a minor sled, you're going to set it at 30. So this one's set at the same 30. Don't move your fence. Leave the fence exactly where it was because we're going to be using that the next cut. So set this up with a stop block. We'll make 2 cuts on this side and then we'll switch it on over to the, just make sure it's hanging over enough so that it cuts half of it off at the angle. So you're going to flip it over and cut the other half. You'll see. Alright, so before you cut your pieces you're going to be using, I'd recommend that you run a couple test pieces. Get this fence dialed in exactly right because this is where it all starts. Make a mistake here, it's just going to multiply on the way out. Alright, so the next sled that you're going to have to make or come up with something similar to is going to be smaller than the width of your hexagon. And what you're going to do now is you're going to use the angle that you cut and put that up against the fence. Now remember, you're still at 3 1/4 on your fence. So clamp this down with one of the angles next to the fence. And everything tied up against there. Okay, once you cut that, loosen up and take it, use it up against the fence also for the next cut. There you go. The start of it, a nice perfect hexagon. Alright, so leave this sled alone with your 30 degrees because you're going to be using that later. What you're going to need is a nice square spacer block, which is just going to give you just enough so that you cut like less than a half of a blade off of what you put here. So what we'll do is we'll put it up against this fence, spacer block, clamp it down, and then pull it out. And then run it through, and you're going to just cut a hair, and you'll see how this is going to come about with the other pieces once we start gluing things together. So what I would recommend doing is I would mark number 1 and take a first cut from number 1 because you're going to be cutting this hexagon throughout. So take your first, just slightly of a shaving off that first edge, and then we'll move on with some gluing. What you need is a nice flat area that you can work on, and because there's a lot of gluing going on here. So what we'll do is we'll start off at number 1, putting some glue on. And since there's a lot of gluing and a lot of individual gluing, we're going to use a heat gun to speed things up. Doesn't take much just to get it warm. And now we'll accelerate this just enough so that you can move on in a few minutes. Okay, so you got that first piece glued in. Put your spacer block in. Run this up against the block. Nice and tight. Clamp it down. And we're going to cut off this excess right here. Okay, so now working counterclockwise, what we need to do is just cover this area here, from here to here. So we just put this one in, and now our next move is to go, and this would be cherry and then maple. We want to put the maple in first, because if we don't, we're going to put ourselves into a corner here and won't be able to cut this off. So that's why the other sled is still set up. You're going to put a 3rd-degree angle on this, set it in and glue it, leaving it overhang, and then we'll come back and put this one in. Alright, so now we can sneak in. I cut the angle on this last piece. Now we can sneak this last piece in. Let's glue this up and then I'll show you the next step. Alright, so the first row is done. Now we need to get it back to a hexagon. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut off all these tails. And doing so, we're just going to use our spacer. Clamp it down and go all the way around it. So you got to remember where you're at and keep track of everything. So I'm always starting with walnut, but I always move it over one. So this is my new starting point. And remember, you got to overhang that first one, and then work your way around counterclockwise. All right, round 4 is completed, and now we got to cut off all the tails again and start over, back to a hexagon. Okay, that's the final row, and now we're going to snip off the tails again, bring it back to the hexagon for the final time. Alright, so you got your hexagon all put together and looking good. So from right here, we have a couple options. We could leave like it is, chamfer the edges and sand it down, and call it a day. Or we take it over to the bandsaw with the circle cutting jig and make it into a round, a big circle, which I think is going to look really nice. That's what I'm going to do. And then we'll round over the edges and we'll sand it down and make it look nice and pretty. Okay, that was a lot of fun. Turned out really nice. You just got to make sure when you're setting everything up that everything's really nice and dialed in, because then it turns out really tight. So what I did was I ended up making 2 of them. So once I was set up, it was easy to make a second one. And I needed to make a second one because I entered the Secret Santa over at Kurt's channel on KRT Wood. And so this one here will go to the Secret Santa. And this one here I'll give it to somebody else. But let me know in the comments what you think. This is a 2 wood one, and this one here is made out of 3. So the design, or the pattern is a little bit different. But let me know what you think, which one you like better. The 2 or the 3. So, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you make one. Hope you have a good Christmas. And I'll see you soon. Hey! Oh, get that guy.